women make these global institutions accountable, and I'll end with saying that our women, when they invested in a pension scheme, they made the asset management company to report them every 3 months. So we had to send by post to that village what is the status, what they are investing. If we have some such partners, I obviously think that the rural population will come into the global economy.
Hey, Arun, is that one of the ways of scaling up? That increasingly as companies realize that this is the best way to actually connect with the final customer being involved, that call that?
Yes, that's the way it's going. That the companies who want to reach the last mile are recognizing that they have to have the local community, in fact, as a partner with NGOs that help to get there. Otherwise, you can't reach the millions that you could reach. You have to sell. The other part is, of course, you want to enable them to be part of your value chain, produce something which you could be using. You need the participation of NGOs supporting the local community. Now, getting into these, I want to say something else. I have been, yes, corporations have the ability to organize on a big scale, and so does government. Government tends to be more rigid when it does it. Corporations perhaps are more responsive to customers when they do it, but that's a skill they have to organize on a very vast scale, which individual entrepreneurs who have the resources maybe don't have the desire even to do it on that large scale. Now, I've found when the ideas of the NGOs and the people in the NGOs get together with big corporations, there is unhappiness with each other. It's about how you take decisions. The big companies or the big government, will say this is the way, headquarters, we have to do it this way. The local person says, well, our people don't, like you pointed out, don't want to do it this way. And they become, I've seen, short of big fights. There is those very unhappy meetings. To say that that's the problem with you people. You keep inventing different things all the time. You don't want to, replicate and scale up. You never grow. And they say, but all you become is another bureaucracy to keep doing the same thing everywhere at the same time. I think that's coming in the way really our ability to work with the complementary.
That is true of just about any corporation, isn't it? That if you start off as a small company, it's entrepreneurial, you are answerable only to yourself. Then you become bigger and you start becoming answerable to more and more employees, to a board. You go public, you are answerable to shareholders. And then you start getting into bureaucracy in any case. I think when you're scaling up anything, you will have those problems.
Well, I would just say one thing is that I don't really agree that you really require NGOs to do this work. On an average, if I was taking out the statistics in Maharashtra shows, there are 8 government employees per village. The problem is they don't want to do it. I mean, if you expect NGOs to deliver fundamental rights, I think there is something fundamentally wrong. Education being a fundamental right if you require someone else to do that.
And then the question that comes is, what is the government doing then if you're relying on NGOs to do this?
Coming back to what you were saying, I think the common theme amongst all of these four and their foundations is that it relates to electricity, primary education, health, rural credit. Education, fundamental right, granted. But I think the problem arises, let's say for example, in lending, we talk about RRBs and 18% being compulsory government mandate for the government to lend out to the underprivileged lot. The problem is that anyone in this room, for example, wants to buy a car, or a big corporation wants a loan of 50 lakhs, 1 crore, 100 crore. Pick up a phone, in fact not even pick it up, don't speak a phone, you just speak to the bank manager and the check will come to your office, hand delivered in 1 week's time. The problem that you deal with, the ladies that you work with, is that if they want to get a 5,000 rupee loan, they have to get 50,000 attestations from the sarpanch, the NOCs, from the local, etc. And then on top of that, to get 5,000 rupees, they have to pay maybe 800 rupees under the table. So I think there is a vacuum there. And the difficulty is in reaching those people, and if once we are reaching and we are able to take those steps and get to the 650,000 villages that we have in India, and those guys are able to access credit on a much easier term. I was speaking to Vikram last year about this, and I asked him, I said, how can you lend at 24% and still get a 98% recovery and only have 2% NPA? 24% is a high percentage, I think, for a rural credit. If you can get a car loan for 10%, 8%, why 24%? He showed me how he broke it up, because there are no hidden costs in the 24%. It's actually down to the paisa. It's all transparent. They take their profit, they replow the profit into the business. And I think once the transparency is there, this 7% what seems like, and you end up paying 18, 20, 30% on it. And the private money lenders charge you 20% a month. So I think the gap is there, and I think people like them can fill it up. I don't think the government can do it anytime in the near future. I think the intentions and the endeavor is there, but it might take some time.
But the government cannot do it anytime in the near future. And let's just look at what the four people out here are representing. They're representing education, urban facilities, electricity, and combating climate change, both in one. Rural credit and, in a sense, addressing poverty. If the government is not supposed to do all of this,
basic
why
rights.
are we paying taxes?
Basic rights.
The
These are
basic rights. It's not something exotic, it's not something different. This is what the government, at the end of the day, is supposed to be doing.
Well, if the government is not able to provide services, we stand outside and keep blaming the government, and governments keep changing. It's not just one government. I think there is a vacuum, there is a demand and supply problem, and obviously, down 60 years, and what they were saying in the beginning, there has been a failure. Whether it's systematic, whether it's individual, whether it's collective, and we can't just keep pointing fingers and
No, but here I disagree just a little, because in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been such a rapid change of everything, from politicians' mindset to governments' mindsets to NGOs' mindsets to corporations' mindsets. The sudden galloping of wanting to do, which wasn't there 5 years back, which wasn't there 8 years back. Suddenly there's accountability. Suddenly there is this urge of wanting to do. And I think that within the next 3 years, when we have people like him as the younger generation of members of parliament coming in, government will become more and more accountable. These guys will be pushing the government to say, okay guys, be more accountable to what you're doing. More money will have to be invested for basic rights to be given to every individual in India. And I think that within the next 1 year, you will find that the NGOs will have a much easier time dealing with the people, dealing with government, and government will have a much easier time in being able to percolate down to the lower level. Hopefully, that many NGOs won't grow. The government will start doing their work that they should have been doing 50 years back.
Okay. Well, we are, of course, I think a couple of days from now at the India Economic Summit, we'll be doing an entire workspace where we're going to look at ways of precisely scaling up models like this. But I just wanted to ask the four of you, now, for all the satisfaction that you must be getting with the tremendous achievements that each one of you has got, there will be times when you will wake up in the morning and say, if only they, whoever the they is, whether it's corporations or government or somebody else, bureaucracy, would be willing to do A, B, and C, then what I'm achieving out here could be 1,000,000 times more. What would those A, B, and C be? And I'd like to ask each of you those questions.
Okay, I mean, basically, in education particularly, there is not really A, B, and C, there is only E, and that's the government. It's a fundamental right of every child in India that's been endowed by the government, so they should be doing it.
What? Doing what? What should the government be doing? What is the ABC
The government
the
should take
be
all
doing?
the moral responsibility and the financial burden of spreading education or reaching education to these masses.
I'm trying to get to something more specific than that. If you have 1 or 2 specific recommendations that you could, yeah, how do you do it? What can the two of them take back to their parties, for example, and say, why don't we try this?
One of the things that we have been propagating is that these schools must be recognized. Wherever these migrants are going, those schools should be recognized like any other grantable school. Why not? I mean, just because they are 6 months doesn't mean that they should not be grantable. The government should provide grants, and then it doesn't require NGOs like us. There could be lots of other educational institutions, those who have expertise in that. They can take it over.
The systemized way, and there's one positive suggestion that migrant students who are studying 6 months at a time should still get their credits in a sense recognized somewhere. That is a possible suggestion to scale that up. How about you?
I could go from A to Z, but I'll stick to A to C. The first thing I would say is that please don't look upon the poor as objects of welfare or charity, but look upon them as productive people who are going to help developing our country. Number 2, I would look at the private sector and tell them that look, the urban poor, I'm not talking about the rural poor, the urban poor are a market. They are a large market, and if you start looking upon them as a market, it's going to be good for both you and for the market.